Now we're going to talk about organelles that capture and release energy. A lot of people have this mindset of comparing the plant and the animal cell and that they can only have one and not the other. Well, it is true that animal cells do not have chloroplast, but plant cells do have mitochondria. Plant cells need to use energy and make energy just like all the other cells that are alive. And so plant cells have to have mitochondria and they have to use ATP. So animal cells do not have chloroplast, but plant cells do have mitochondria. I don't know what this is. Okay. So amoeba sisters are always a bunch of fun, should make us giggle. And so chloroplasts are found in plant cells and they are usually considered green, and they're green because of the chlorophyll, which is the pigment that's found in the inside of these stacked membranes of the chloroplast. So again, here we are, we're looking at actual pictures of the chloroplast on the right, instead of just looking at a model that someone has drawn. And so if we were to cut up a chloroplast, we can actually see what's inside of them. So before, they just looked like these nugget things within the plant cell. And then as technology advanced, we found out that inside of the chloroplast, we actually have these stacked grana inside that contain pigments that is where the photosynthesis is occurring. So before, we just thought of them as these little globular things within the cytoplasm. And now we know that they have more structure inside. And so over here in this plant cell, you can see the chloroplast here. Again, that characteristic green color. There are other pigments associated with photosynthesis besides just chlorophyll. The reason why you can see green, or that a plant is green, is because the plants are absorbing all the other colors of light. So they're gobbling up red, orange, blue, violet. And the color of light that they don't like is green. And so green is being reflected back to your eyeball. So the plant likes all the other colors except for green, and it lets green escape back. And that's why plants look green. Some special little plants are little microorganisms called diatoms. And so diatoms can photosynthesize. They're called diatoms because we usually see them in these matching pairs, two dia. If you have a swimming pool, you probably know about diatomaceous earth. Diatomaceous earth is simply just a whole bunch of skeletons of diatoms, and they're used as a filtering agent. Just food for fact. So again, here we have real pictures. And so we have pictures of the chloroplast, and then we get even closer to the chloroplast. So these little round structures in these cells. And then we can see, if we use a even more powerful microscope, here we have a chloroplast that has been busted open. And so inside here, actually these are the chloroplasts, sorry. So we have a cell wall that's busted open, and here's the chloroplast. And then if we slice a chloroplast, then we can magnify even more. And right here is a chloroplast that has been sliced so that we can see the inside. So here are those stacked membranes we were talking about, and you have this liquid-filled area here. And this is where the magic of photosynthesis occurs. We have to eat other organisms to get our energy. Plants do not. They can take photons, which is light from the sun, and in the chloroplast and the pigments, they change that energy into chemical energy that we can use. And so they take that photon energy from the sun and the pigments and carbon dioxide, and they do their magic inside of the chloroplast and spit out, lucky for us, carbohydrates and other organic material. Their waste product is oxygen. Our waste product is carbon dioxide. That's kind of interesting. We respire, which means we use glucose to make energy, and our waste product is carbon dioxide. When plants do their magic here and make photosynthesis, their waste product is oxygen. Okay, video that I'll pop up in Informative. The mighty mitochondria. The mitochondria are responsible for taking organic molecules and breaking them down to make ATP, adenosine triphosphate. ATP is like the energy currency of cells. For you to tap your foot, it costs your body ATP, and the mitochondria make that ATP so that you can tap your foot. Your heart beating, your eyelashes opening and closing, that all costs ATP. So the mitochondria are what the microscopic part of us that take the food we eat and change it into that ATP molecule so that we can do nice and groovy things throughout our body, which is very complex compared to a cell. So again, these are the mitochondria here, and these are the chloroplast. I showed you this slide to remind you that plants have to undergo respiration also. They have to take macromolecules like a sugar and break it down to make ATP just like an animal cell does. So plants undergo cellular respiration too. Again, I'll show you this here in a little bit. So there's this big dichotomy. Everybody is like comparing the chloroplast and the mitochondria. One because one's in a plant cell and one isn't. So just keep in mind that plant cells have mitochondria, but animal cells do not have chloroplast. Wouldn't it be great if you could just go out into the sun and not have to eat? You could just like, oh, the sun. And you could be an autotroph and you could photosynthesize. But I don't know about being green. We would have to be green. So animal cells do not photosynthesis and do not have chloroplast. We're going to go ahead and include this one here with our mitochondria and our chloroplast and talk about the cell membrane. The cell membrane is called the phospholipid bilayer. Every cell has a cell membrane, and we are going to learn several new words here in this little section. And so if we blew up the cell and looked at it, we have the phospholipids. And so what those are, we have these circular blobs representing the phosphate, and we have these little stringy tails that represent the fatty acid tails. The phosphate is considered hydrophilic. Hydro meaning water, phil meaning love. And so they're attracted to water. Versus the fatty acid tails, fatty being the Cree word there, they are hydrophobic. Hydro, water, phobe, fear. And so they are repelled by water. So the plasma membrane kind of naturally arranges itself in this arrangement with the phosphates on the outside and the fatty acid tails on the inside. We are going to talk a lot about the plasma membrane, especially when we talk about homeostasis and how cells take things in and release things also. So not only does the plasma membrane or the cell membrane help protect the cell and it's a boundary, it also regulates what can go in and out of the cell. And again, looking at real stuff. And so here we have Streptococcus pyogenes. That's what causes you to have strep throat. And you can see here it has a cell wall. And if you remember the difference between archaebacteria and true bacteria, one of those is that the archaebacteria does not have this thick cell wall. They only have the plasma membrane. And this thick cell wall is like the plant cell wall, kind of, in that it protects the bacterium and also protects the bacterium and allows it to keep homeostasis. The difference is the bacteria cell wall is made up of a protein called peptoglycan. And so plant cells don't have peptoglycan, they have cellulose. And so what I did for you here is I blew up this section right here to show you that the gray line right here is the plasma membrane, and this thicker part right here is the cell wall. Again, we are going to hear it called the phospholipid bilayer. Phospholipid, and then we have the phosphate and the fatty acid tail, so phospholipid, and that there's two layers. There's one layer of phosphates here and one layer of phosphates there. So phospholipid bilayer. You can read this here. You can pause it and read this, and we're going to go on. The one thing to remember is that lipids are hydrophobic. They don't dissolve in water and they're repelled by water. So if you were to take oil and water and put it in a bottle and shake it up, the oil is not going to dissolve. It's going to separate from the water. This goes along with another function of the cell membrane in that it's a regulator. And so we have this word called selectively permeable. Selectively meaning it selects or only lets certain things go in and out of the cell. Permeable means allowing things to pass through. So you don't want your raincoat to be permeable to water. An example of what permeable means. So the plasma membrane is selectively permeable, meaning it's only going to let certain things into the cell and certain things out of the cell. And we'll talk about that more in detail when we, excuse me, get to homeostasis. You're going to hear the cell membrane called the fluid mosaic model. And it simply means that the plasma membrane is kind of a hodgepodge of everything. It has proteins in it, it has lipids, it has pores, and it's fluid, meaning that it's not stagnant like this. Like it moves and bends and folds as needed. So it's not rigid. It kind of has this flowy kind of consistency. So fluid mosaic. Mosaic made up a whole bunch of things. So to compare and contrast our boundaries in our different types of cells, here we have an animal cell that has the plasma membrane, plant cell that has the plasma membrane, and the bacteria cell that has the plasma membrane, the white area here. And then differences that the bacteria has a cell wall, and that cell wall has peptidoglycan, and that the plant cell has a rigid cell wall and that has cellulose in it. Neat little fact, we can't digest cellulose, so if you chew up a bunch of paper, you're not going to break down that cellulose for any nutrient value. Versus a cow has specialized stomachs and specialized bacteria that live in their stomach that help them ruminate. They're called ruminants to help them break down plant cells. So here's an example of this fluid mosaic model. Fluid in that it can bend and curve. Mosaic in that it has all these different kind of things embedded within it. Okay, so I'll show this to you. We watched this video together already. And I think I will pause for a moment. So I had to pause because Lucy here, I can get her in the screen, is being a little needy. Lucy, there she is. Say hi, Lucy. Okay, sorry. She probably won't stay here very long. She wants up here and then she doesn't want up here. Anyway, I digress. So we have already talked a lot about the differences between prokaryotes and eukaryotes, but here we go. It pops up again. And so number 12 in your active reading asks you to underline the differences between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. And then the next question asks you to identify the structures that they have labeled. You guys should be able to do this like crazy. So key question, how are prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells different? Again, you guys have already slam dunked this one. You can pause and read this if you want to. Don't forget that you have this table. I would star it, make sure that you have it in your things to study for the test. Here is the Amoeba Sisters gift. Let me move my blob here. So I'll let it play. Okie dokie pokey. And then we can't remember this information. So in life science and biology, the things we learn kind of build on each other. So you're going to be expected to remember as we go along that prokaryotes are simple organisms and that protists are not closely related to the animals. And so this classification of organisms is something that you're going to have to remember as we go along. We've already watched this video. So another synopsis comparing the different types of cells. Prokaryotes are smaller, not as complex. They do not have a nucleus or membrane-bound organelles, but they do have ribosomes. They have the cell membrane, which is this white covering, and then they also have the cell wall, which is made up of a specialized molecule called peptidoglycan. Then we have the animal cell, and the animal cell has the plasma membrane, and we have the plant cell that has that cell membrane or plasma membrane, but it also has the cell wall, and one of the major components of the cell wall is cellulose. Both the plant and animal cells have mitochondria, but the plant cells are the only ones that have the chloroplast, and the chloroplast is where photosynthesis occurs. The mitochondria is the location of where cellular respiration occurs, or the breakdown of organic molecules to produce energy. And the plant cell has this large central vacuole that the animal cell does not have. So there you have your label question. Then you end up with a visual summary. And you, oh, Lucy. And then you have your lesson review. And we will probably turn the lesson review in as paper. Just depends how much of the formatives I can get done. And that is the